So we are now into Q4. Let's take a look at how much money I made from self-publishing on Amazon KDP in October. So first of all, it's October, so that means happy Halloween. And in this income report, I'm going to include a little bit more detail than usual. I'm going to go through all the orders, income, profit, ad spend, all those kind of things. But I'm also going to take you through a little case study on my Halloween books that I published this month. So to get going as well, I wanted to take a little look back over the past few years in October. This is really cool and really important because it gives you a bigger picture view of the growth. And, if you're a little bit closer to the start of your journey, maybe this is going to help you see where you can go as long as you continue going and publishing high quality books. So back in October of 2022, I had $141 of royalties and I achieved $23 in profit. Now, ignore that 169 books there because that's just from my KDP reports dashboard now. I might have only had maybe 20 books out at this time. And so back in 2022, in the month, I made $23 in profit. Skipping forward to October 2023, you can see those royalties really increasing. And that's because I was learning what sells well on Amazon KDP and publishing some new books. And then from maybe around 60, 70 books in total, I made $118 in profit. Then looking back to last year, those royalties doubled. They got to a really nice point and just under $3,000 in royalties in October of 2024 with a very healthy profit of $1,984. So over the past 3 years, you're seeing really nice growth on Amazon KDP month on month, year on year. Will that continue for 2025? Let's find out. So every month I like to set myself goals for my self-publishing and for my income targets. So this month I wanted to publish 3 books, get 1,400 orders for my books, and try to achieve $2,400 in monthly profit. I'm happy to say that I did publish 3 books and I hit my orders target, but unfortunately I didn't quite hit the monthly profit target. And just before we get into the book orders, this is what I did in the month of October. I published 7 books on Amazon. So that's well above my 3 book target, but I did only publish 3 new books. It was a doodle book for adults, and then I did an activity and a puzzle book, both for adults as well. But the great thing is those 3 books turned into 7 new titles because I also translated them to German and I also translated one of them to French. So this is going to be my very first book published directly to the French marketplace in French and utilising ads in France to see if I can start getting some sales over in France. Over here on YouTube, I've published 7 videos and 3 shorts. If there's anything specifically you want to be seeing that I'm not showing, drop a comment down below. And again, I'm trying to publish some shorts. So if there's any shorts, 60-second videos that I could do that would be helpful, let me know. And then over on Etsy, I've published 1 pre-made book cover and I also did a paperback book cover for someone as well. So Etsy's ticking along and I'm going to be making some more Etsy videos soon. But on to what you all want to know, which is how many books did I sell in October? I sold 1,485 books. So as you can see there, it's now up to 169 books. Every month that's increasing as I publish new titles. And then the aim is the more books that I publish, the higher these sales are going to be. So here throughout the month, I had a really nice spike on the 9th of October when someone published 20 books in a single order. So that's a bulk order, and I don't get those very often. But when they do happen, you can see that it leads to nice spikes. Otherwise, my lowest sales per day was 26 on the 11th of October. I think there was a little problem with Amazon, with the AMS systems, all those kind of things. So that's probably why it was a little bit lower then. But overall, it's pretty steady throughout the month. In terms of where I sell my book, you can see there that the United States is still my #1 marketplace. However, the United Kingdom is very, very close behind. So out of the 1,400 book sales, you can see there that the vast majority are the USA and the United Kingdom. However, I am selling some over in Canada and Germany is increasing every month as well. I've not yet achieved 100 book sales in a month over in Germany, so hopefully that will happen in November. And then in terms of other marketplaces, I've got a few sales in Australia and just a few trickling along in Ireland, Italy and Sweden. Looking into my best selling books, now I want to be transparent, I want to be informative on this channel, but what I'm a little bit hesitant to do is just show you the book titles and the book covers, because then copycats come along and it can affect my performance. And this is how I'm making my full-time income. These YouTube channels, this Amazon KDP journey, this is how I pay the bills. So I just have to be a little bit protective of that. But what I do want to do is tell you as much information about these as possible. So here are my 6 best-selling books in October. So the number 1 best-selling book is an activity and puzzle book for kids. So that has 290 sales for the month, and I made that using BookBolt. So if you want to try out BookBolt for yourself and get 20% off, click the link down in the description, use code SELF-PUBLISHING-EMPIRE. It's an absolutely amazing tool that you can use for creating things like word searches, crosswords, Sudokus, all those kind of puzzle and activity pages. BookBolt is really good for doing that, and this top book was created using BookBolt. Then below that, you've got a colouring book for adults, which is one I published around 2 years ago, which continues to drive organic sales. And then below that are relatively new books. So you've got 2 puzzle books for adults, a puzzle book for kids in the same sort of area, and then below that, an activity book for seniors. So you can see there, I've got a variety of my styles of books. They're all in different types of niches as well, but some of them do share some similarities. So my advice with this is test a few different niches, test a few different types of books, and when you find something that works, make a follow-up of that book. That's what that puzzle book for adults there that are number 3 and 4 are. They're in the same series, and because that first one was selling well, I then made a second and a third and a fourth, and then the hope is over time, all of those are going to trickle along and make sales. Looking back at my sales across 2025, just so you can see the growth, or maybe not quite the growth, across the year so far, you can see here that the orders every month have been pretty steady. Unfortunately, unlike 2024 when I've seen a gradual rise, 2025 has been pretty flat. But what I am doing is I'm trying to build for November and December when that Q4 Christmas boom comes. The one positive of this is that ever since June, the orders had been dropping every month. Whereas in October, I've seen a nice uptick now. I've hit my book order total, my goal for the month. So hopefully this is the start of the nice Christmas boom into November and December. And just taking a quick look at one of my best selling books. So this is a book that I released in February 2025, and it's my best selling book that I released this year. And so you can see there in February, it just got a couple of sales. And then ever since then, it's made more sales every single month. Yes, I'm spending money on advertising for this book, but this book so far has got almost 1,500 orders for the year. And hopefully in November and December, that's going to double, if not triple. So I just wanted to show you that, not all of my books that are selling are ones I published back in 2023. I am publishing new books that are doing very well as well. Now, it is October, so I'm going to do a little bit of a Halloween special. This is going to be really useful to those that are publishing books and targeting specific areas, because I've published 5 books for Halloween and we're going to see how they got on for me. So Halloween publishing, I published 5 books. It was 1 puzzle book for adults, 1 for kids, and 1 colouring book. However, I then translated 2 of these to German to try and tackle that German marketplace. So it was 3 books in total with 2 translated versions. And then I used Amazon ads to launch all of them. In terms of how many orders we got from these 5 books, I got 154 orders, and I started publishing these Halloween books at the beginning of September. So as you can see there were just 2 books at the beginning of September. It was that yellow and light blue line. And then I introduced some new books in September and the beginning of October. The biggest spike there was at the beginning of October. And unfortunately, it didn't really spike like I was hoping just before Halloween. In terms of how much money these 5 books made me, they made me $447.58 in royalties. Again, looking down there, apart from that big spike, there were a few little spikes in October, but it wasn't at the level that I was hoping for. So breaking this down into marketplaces, you can see there the majority of my income came from the United States. And what's interesting there, from the 2 German books, my German marketplace was second. So even though I used ads in the USA and the UK and in Canada, the Germany marketplace performed probably the strongest in terms of the ad spend and the results. Talking about ad spend, I'm just going to share that with you now. So I spent $543 on ads for these 5 books. I achieved 834 clicks and 76 orders at 62.87% ACOS, which if you follow these videos, you know that's not a very good ACOS. What tends to happen with new books when you're launching ads is the ACoS tends to be a little bit higher anyway, because you need to bid a little bit higher to compete with books that are already serving. And so over time, that ACoS would likely come down. And that's one of the issues with publishing these kind of seasonal books. You have to bid quite high, and then before you know it, the season's over. So the hope is that maybe some of these might get some more sales next year in October 2026, but I don't know that for sure. And so we're going to look at what the profit was for these books. Just to mention though, quite an important thing is that $274 of this ad spend was spent just on one book, which was an English version colouring book. That only made me $57 in royalties. So that one kind of skewed the whole data. So I'm going to take that into account now. Results for these 5 Halloween books: income $448, ad spend $553, which means my profit for these Halloween books was minus $95. Plus all that time it took to make it. I could have been making different types of books. I could have been making YouTube videos. So a very, very poor return on investment for these books. However, if I do take out the colouring book, my income would have been $391 and my ad spend would have been $269, which meant that my potential profit, if I didn't publish that failed colouring book, could have been $122. Now, still not a great return on investment, but it would have been a profit. And so let's just go through a few thoughts from October to begin with. Number 1, Halloween colouring books. I don't think they're worth it. I think the same with a lot of seasonal content. Because you need to spend money on marketing and advertising, you're not necessarily going to make your money back. And that's why it's probably worth your while focusing on more evergreen books where you can get your money back over time, even if you make a loss in the first couple of months. Number 2 is colouring books. Maybe skip them. I've really struggled recently to find successful niches within colouring because they're just so competitive, and I end up spending more money on ads than I get back in return. However, if you're an illustrator, I'd highly recommend keep going, keep building your brand. But for those of us that are using AI, even if you're retouching them and making them into really high quality colouring books, I'd suggest maybe skipping on colouring books or focusing on other areas. The first 2 to 3 months of a book is very important. So you need to be driving sales over those first 2 to 3 months of a book's lifespan, or else it's just going to fall down the Amazon algorithm and you're very unlikely to get sales over the long term. So basically how Amazon works is if you're generating sales over the first few months, there's every chance that you're going to get ongoing organic sales. So the first 2 to 3 months is very important. So that was the little Halloween October update, but let's get back into how much money I made in October on Amazon KDP. I made $4,006, which is a lovely increase from September. For my Brits out there, that's £3,045. Now, that doesn't include advertising, so I'm going to go straight into that now, and then we can get into the take-home profit as well. So a quick warning on this isn't for the faint of heart. I think this is the biggest month I've ever experienced with Amazon ads. So across all of my marketplaces, I spent $1,822.71 on my ads, an average cost per click of 37 cents. I did, however, generate 478 orders at a 35.65% ACoS. So that ACoS is definitely higher than what I'm used to. I think over the last few months it's around 25%. And that's because I've been aggressively launching some of these new Halloween books. And as you saw previously, they've not really gone too well. So if you want to take a little bit more look at the data here along that top bar, feel free to pause the video. Else we're going to look at what this looks like across different marketplaces. So in the US, I spent $925, got 182 orders at a 48% ACoS, which is very high for me. In the UK, it was $690 for 229 orders at a 27.69% ACoS. So that's much better, and it's a bit more like what I'd expect. So I think it's a US marketplace where it skewed my data a little bit. But I did say in September's income report video that I was going to be a bit more aggressive in the US marketplace. Then in Germany, I spent $179 for 47 orders at a 30% ACoS. And as you can see there, that purple and that pink line, at the beginning of the month, they were quite close together. But then as I was getting a little bit more aggressive with my ads, the spend went up, and if anything, the orders went down. So that's not great. That's kind of the reverse of what you would want with your ad results. Then in Canada, $202 of spend for 53 orders at 34% ACoS. Putting that all together, My total clicks for the month were 4,987, up quite a lot from last month. My estimated spend was around $1,823. My orders through my ads were 478, which is up from last month, but maybe not up quite enough. My clicks per order were 10.4, average cost per click of 37 cents, which meant my estimated cost per sale was $3.81. And what that means is that for every sale I'm making through Amazon ads, it's costing me $3.81. That is not sustainable, and that is not a good return on investment for me. So moving into November, what I need to do, I need to fix my clicks per order. So instead of it being 10 clicks per order, if I can bring that down to 9 or 8, that's going to get me a better estimated cost per sale. And also if I can reduce the cost per click a little bit, that's going to help as well. What that looks like in terms of profit for the month, my income was $4,006. My ad spend was a whopping $1,823. My expenses were around $106. So that's my ChatGPT Pro subscription, plus around $78 for my Adobe package, which means my take-home profit for the month was around $2,077, around £1,579. So in terms of orders on Amazon KDP, it was a very strong month. And I managed to get the royalties over $4,000 for the first time in a few months. So that was really promising to see. However, what wasn't promising to see was the amount of ad spend that it took to get there, because I'm spending about half of my income on ads. And that's because I'm trying to be a bit more aggressive with my advertising. I'm trying to focus on sales in November and December, but the Halloween tests that I did this month just didn't work at all. And because if we look back at the Q4 performance from last year, it looked like this. So you can see that October, it was pretty steady, but then once we get into November, orders started increasing, and then into December, they went up rapidly. So if we link that to this year, yes, my profit's not quite where I want it to be, but the hope is that as we move into November, and especially into December, you're going to see the income rise and we're going to see the profit rise. Taking a quick look at some tips and tricks that I've picked up in October, my advice would be to keep making high quality books. It can be quite tempting to find a way to make 5, 10 books within a month and pump them out there and hope that you get some results. But from my experience, you're mostly going to be wasting time. And seeing as you need to use ads to launch a book, it's better to create one really, really high quality book and put ad spend behind it and then get ongoing sales for the longer term. Because if you're launching 10 low quality books, even if you get some initial sales, they're likely going to get poor reviews. And the likelihood is over time, you're not going to make ongoing profit. From what I've seen, I would advise ignoring seasonal books for the most part, unless you've got an interesting spin on an idea, and unless you've found a niche where you don't need to spend too much money to rank on page 1. Because yes, seasonal books can blow up and can take off, especially on places like TikTok. But if you're going a bit more down the traditional route of using ads and competing with loads of books, it's very hard to break through and to make your money back. I'd also advise to reduce expectations with colouring books. I think it was around 2 years ago that you could launch a colouring book and make loads of money. Whereas now there's so much AI content, there's so many bold and easy colouring books, and it's just very, very hard to break through. So if you're making colouring books, I'd say that's fine. Just reduce your expectations a little bit and maybe control your ad spend. Don't spend too much money on ads for colouring books. And as I've seen in October, unless you're monitoring it every single day, your ad spend will probably naturally increase as we get into Q4. That's because there's more people searching for presents and gifts and those kind of things. So if you're on a budget, make sure you're monitoring your ad spend. But to finish this on a positive, we're in the final push now for Christmas. So make sure you're getting your books published this month. And because this month's had a few negative spins on it with the Halloween results, I did want to share a huge positive, and that's my results in Germany so far. So I now have 9 books published in German, and you can see here, this is my results in Germany across the lifetime of my KDP account. And so I wasn't making any sales in Germany up until this year. And then you can see there in March, it's been going up over time. And I've now made over $1,300 in Germany from these 9 books. So if I could make 90 books of the same sort of quality, that could increase to 13,000. And that's the way I look at things. I'll test something to see how it's going, maybe with 5, 10 books. And if it's going well, I'll double down and do more in that area. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in Germany. Now, it's not just Germany either, it's France, Italy, Spain, all these different marketplaces that Amazon allows you to publish in. I just want to share a few tips about launching a book in a foreign marketplace. So I'd suggest, at least to start with, choosing an easy to translate book, whether that's a colouring book, a kid's book, a book that has lots of pictures and not too much text in. They're going to be really easy for you to translate, and if you need to hire a translator, it won't cost you too much money. I suggest using AI for small bits. So things like your headings, your Amazon description, if you're not sure on the spell checking or a grammar check of a certain term, that's where AI can be really useful. However, if you have paragraphs in your book or you have lots of text, I suggest using a translator. I use one on Fiverr and it cost me around £20 to translate a book with not too many words in. Obviously, if you're translating a fiction book with 80,000 words, it's going to cost you a lot to translate that book. But for things like activity books, colouring books that have words in, guided journals, those kind of things, definitely look into a translator. And just like you would with Amazon.com, make sure you're researching the correct keywords to target and utilising that in your title and your subtitle. Let's say you're doing a German colouring book. Colouring book in German is Malbuch, and that's what people tend to search for. But let's say you use Google Translate and it told you a different word. People might not be searching for that slightly different word. So you just need to make sure you're doing your research on keywords and utilising them effectively. And then make sure you're not neglecting A+ content, and also you'll need to use Amazon ads to launch your book just like you would in Amazon.com. Phew, it's a big video so far. I hope you don't mind the in-depthness that I'm going into in this video. I'm just going to share with you some November goals and some final thoughts, and then we're there. So November goals, I want to publish 3 high quality books, get to 3,000 book orders, and try and achieve $4,200 in profit. And so the reason I've set those goals is they're pretty much double what I achieved this month. And from the last couple of years, you tend to see double the results in November. And so that's what I'm going for November of 2025. And then also slightly left field, I want to publish another video on that 40s guy. So that's my second YouTube channel where I talk about all the things in my 40s. But I recently published a video where I talk about quitting my job at 38. I've received some fantastic feedback about that video. If you want to check out my other channel, I'll link it down in the description below or put a card in the corner. So if there's anything else you want to see on that 40s guy channel, whether it's talking about income, side hustles, whatever it may be, drop a comment down below and let me know. But if you want some more Amazon KDP content, you can hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for future videos. Make sure to sign up to my newsletter. There's a link down in the description below. I only send out 1 to 2 a month, so I'm not going to send you a ton of spam, so don't worry about that. Or you can book a consultation with me on my website. So head on over to publishwithme.com/consultation, and on there you can book a 35-minute chat with me or an hour-long chat with me, depending on how much advice you would need. And we can talk one-on-one. You can share your screen. You can ask any questions you have about Amazon KDP, publishing, income, advertising, whatever it may be. My goal with that is to help those that really want some one-on-one advice. And that's it for another month of Amazon KDP. Did you prefer this more in-depth version where I do a little case study in the middle? Or do you want me to streamline it back and make it around 10 to 12 minutes? Let me know down in the comments. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.